Hey, I'm Rora.
I'm Jane.
And we are Birds of Clay.
And we're here to talk all things Australian pottery and ceramic art.
So put your kettle on
and let's have a chat. We would like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians on the lands on which this podcast is recorded. We acknowledge the rich history of art, craft and storytelling that has been occurring for millennia, and acknowledge elders past, present and country as provider, protector and guide. Working with clay is intrinsically linked to country, and we would not be here without the care and connection that our First Nations peoples have shown for thousands of years on this continent we call Australia. Hi everyone, it's Jane here. I'm on my own today without Rora, but I am joined by the wonderful artist and teacher David Usher. We're so lucky to talk to David, especially at this moment because last night he'd just won an amazing art award. He was the overall winner of the Fairholme Open Art Prize for his painting, yes I know it's a painting, we won't hold that against him, Under the Magic Mountain. It's a beautiful work and I recommend you check it out. Congratulations, David! In this chat, we really dive into David's history as an artist, a production potter, a teacher and community worker. I personally found this chat really inspiring and I hope you do too. Please remember, I'm still learning how to interview and I promise I'll get better. Thanks everyone, hope you enjoy it. Hi David.
Hi.
It's Jane here today. I'm recording on my own with David Usher, which is very exciting, and it's a lovely day to be recording this because David has just won a wonderful art prize.
Oh yes, that was fun.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Yeah, so you were the overall winner in the Fairholme Open Art Prize.
Yeah,
for a beautiful painting work. So we won't talk about it too much because this is a ceramics podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Jane.
A little disappointed it wasn't a ceramic work, but that's okay.
No, probably should have been. But.
Yeah. But David is also my university teacher in ceramics. So,
yes.
And you've been doing clay for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Since about 85, 86.
Yeah, wow. So I guess we might just start off with, how did you get into clay?
Youth group, church youth group, and Monica's mum, my partner, her mum, Kitty, came to the youth group on a Saturday night, I think, to do a demonstration, a throwing demonstration. And I'd never seen anything like it. It was like magic, witchcraft, except it was at youth group. Anyway. And it was just amazing to see that process. I'd literally never encountered that before. Never really thought about how ceramic forms were made. Hadn't kind of connected the dots there. And so that was really interesting to see that process. And I already knew Monica through youth group. So then I realised that she also could throw and had done a traineeship. And
You're like, ooh, who's this?
Yes.
This hot lady that can do this magical thing on the wheel.
Exactly. And I mean, we were friends for a long time. We were not going out at that stage, but just became interested in that process.
Yeah.
But I was interested in painting from the start. So the clay thing came about after we started going out together, and I'd go over to visit her place, and her mum had a studio in the backyard in Albion in Brisbane.
Yeah, lovely.
Kitty Art Pottery, and Kitty had been there with her dad, and they'd started a pottery in Brisbane in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
And used to make work for selling at shows like the Royal Brisbane Show, the Ekka. And Kitty made work that she sold through Johnson Brothers Gallery, which was in the 60s and 70s, was probably one of the premier galleries in Brisbane. And they, at the time, they were in near Cloudland, whatever suburb that was.
Oh, like Paddington Way, is it? Or...
No, so of over that way towards where Cloudland was. I should know the suburb. Anyway, they had a gallery there which was really well respected, and Kitty used to make throne works that she sold through the gallery there. So she had a pottery in Albion. I'd go to visit Monica. They'd be in the pottery in the studio making work, and so I just gravitated towards that. Still interested in painting. This would have been early 80s, 81, 82, I guess, 82. And started helping in the studio, cleaning up, making glazes. Monica was teaching me how to throw. Clary, who was also, Monica and Clary could throw already because it was in their blood. And Clary, I remember Clary helping me to learn to throw. And she was probably only about 15, 16 then.
Yeah, wow. And so were you at art school then? Or
So I had been at art school at Seven Hills Art College in 81, 82.
Yeah.
But Monica had been there. We kind of overlapped. I was going at night because I had an apprenticeship during the day, and I was going at night because I'd already realised that I wanted to follow that. Yeah. But it was hard to follow painting as a career at that stage. Was you had to have a day job, unless you were. I guess you could have been on dole and done that, and gone to art college and got the study allowance, yeah. And it was free at the time. Those educations were free at the time, so there was appealing things about it. But I was working. And
what was your apprenticeship in?
Plumbing.
Plumbing, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so I did that because I finished high school and had no idea what I wanted to do. So I went to Macrobat College, trade college, and they were offering apprenticeships. I kind of came around and said, anyone want to do this? I didn't know what plumbing was. I thought it was more like surveying. I thought, I reckon I could plumb things out in the country. You know,
that's great.
Yeah, I was more interested in surfing, so I probably was a bit sun-bleached and not the brightest button. Anyway, so I started that apprenticeship, but I knew within a fortnight I knew this
wasn't for you.
No, I finished it, but I was interested in going to study at Seven Hills. That was a great encounter and experience, and the Camp Hill at Seven Hills, which is no longer there, unfortunately, was a beautiful art brutalist bunch of buildings. Yeah, beautiful gardens. Really had a creative atmosphere, dynamic about it. And it was a busy place. It was one of the biggest art colleges in Brisbane at the time. So
it turned into Queensland College of Art, didn't it?
Yeah, and they moved to South Bank.
Yeah.
And the government sold the site. I think there's 200 units or 100 units there now.
Wow.
Because it was a big chunk of land.
Yeah.
There's still a theatre there too, I think.
I went there straight from school.
Yeah.
I went to QCA. Yeah. At Seven Hills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you finish at Seven Hills?
I didn't. I only did a semester.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did photography and then went over to Nathan to do...
Yep.
Yeah. Environmental science, so yeah.
Yeah, so you know the place. It was something about it was really charming and...
Yeah, it was a cool space. It was like right in the bush, like there was a lot of bushland,
just
but
on the edge of the
concrete
bush,
and
Seven Hills, in the burbs a bit, and free. Everything, everything was free.
Yeah.
Car park was free. The food wasn't free, but the refectory wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was early 80s, and so working in the pottery, while I was working just in the pottery in my spare time with Monica and Kitty. And kind of learning to throw a bit. Errol Barnes, who was a family friend, had come down. Monica had done her apprenticeship with him at Lyrebird Ridge Pottery in Springbrook, so back of the Gold Coast. And he visited one day, and I was in the studio packing a kiln or something, and we got chatting, and he was looking for trainees. He'd kind of finished the last group of trainees. He usually had 3 or 4 at a time. And he was looking for the next cohort, so he said, "Look, would you be interested in coming up to Springbrook and starting, well, it's a traineeship or an apprenticeship, I guess, with him as a master potter. And I said, yes, I would. So we moved up there in late 86, early 87. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I've seen some of Errol Barnes's works at Hoda.
Yes.
Down at the Gold Coast. I love his work, and he seemed to have done work with some painters like William Robinson, and so it must have been quite a group of kind of artists working in that area.
It was my timing to be there was perfect, really, because as a painter it was perfect because he and Ray Hughes were old mates from Teachers College, and Ray had the gallery in Enoggera Terrace in Brisbane, and also he had the gallery in Surrey Hills in Sydney. So Ray sent his artists up to Errol's to paint forms that Errol was making, or hand-built forms. So Bill Robinson, Joe Furlonger, Robert Moore, June Tupikoff, Davida Allen, like some serious artists, Australian artists, went through there making work with Errol in about a 2-year period. And then they had exhibitions at Ray Hughes in Enoggera Terrace when he was there, and in Sydney they had a big show there. So that was perfect for me as a painter to be learning about clay and how to make work in a functional sense, so production throwing, but to see painters working on those surfaces, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Because it kind of connected the dots for me, and I could see this pathway for me to be a ceramicist who then worked on the surface as well.
That's great. We spoke to Shannon Garson and Sarah Rayner a couple interviews ago, and Shannon actually said that meeting Monica and Clary and seeing these women paint on the surface of pots.
Yeah.
And did they had a business or something?
Yeah, Amphora. It was it was a gallery in Red Hill for a couple of years, and then Clary moved it to the city. So it was in the Brisbane Arcade in the city upstairs, huge gallery space. And there was Two Blue Fish, the clothing company, was there. There was a few kind of boutique places going. So Amphora was in the city for about 2 years. That was amazing. But yes, so Amphora was a collective of artists, mostly women, Shannon and Melissa Booth, Kylie Johnson, who's got Paperback Press, Maria Breeden, and Clary was running it. Monica was there. So there was about 7 or 8 artists, and I was involved too, which was great. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those beautiful little moments of like kind of Queensland ceramic history that and that's, it's nice to talk about it and record it, because I think these are the stories we need to hear.
Well, you forget.
And so how long were you with Errol?
So I was there from 87, started early 87, end of 86 to 1990, and then came back to Brisbane to set up my own studio, and I was working as well, but set up a studio under the house at Paddington. That was great because by that point I had been making pots for Errol, but also making pots for myself and painting them and exhibiting them. So I started exhibiting in about early 89 at QPA, or Fusions, I think it was then. And I had a solo show just of paintings and pots around that time. But everything kind of was coming together in terms of understanding how my practice might evolve and how I could make these forms, which were classical in a sense, but then contemporary images, landscape, figurative, on the surface, and directly influenced by people like Joe Furlonger, Bill Robinson. I worked with him as his lackey for a while, making stuff and making him cups of tea and making sure he was happy while he was working. That was a beautiful experience.
And so what was kind of inspiring you at that time, like with what you were painting? Like you said, kind of landscapes and figurative, but what was kind of, I guess... Yeah.
Well, the environment up there, Springbrook's, it's subtropical rainforest, it's elevated, amazing lyrebirds and just beautiful place, but also wet. So I was looking at that kind of imagery, but also because there were people painting figuratively around me, I also realised, actually, these clunky figures that I do of family and my surfing experiences could actually translate to a ceramic surface. So you kind of have this other dimension because they're three-dimensional forms. So those things were really connected for me.
Yeah. No, I love seeing some of your older work. If anyone's listening out there and wants to get an image of it, we'll put David's Instagram in the show notes. And I loved, actually, last night I was scrolling through, and it's just a beautiful archive you've created there of just your life and also your art and the experiences. And I was thinking, it's one of the best Instagram kind of profiles I've seen around.
Thank you. Yeah, well, you kind of don't have it. You just do it, don't you?
Yeah.
And I use Instagram to document things because a lot of those are photos. So, I lose them, I find them, and I'm thinking, I just post it because then at least I know where they are.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
No, it's really nice just seeing that, and kind of it does look a little bit romanticized to me. I'm like, surfing and doing an apprenticeship. And
Well, there were certainly romantic elements to it.
Yeah.
But certainly not unromantic elements to it. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And so you moved back to Brizzy, set up your own studio. Was there any other kind of work you were doing? Like, I know there's work you've done with community.
Yeah. So when I came back, I was working in a production pottery in Brisbane for about 6 months or so. And that was Yarra Glen Pottery, though. So they made functional ware for, it was a party plan, huge thing around Australia. And so that was kind of my training. So making thousands of pots, functional pots, medium sized to large works. And then I went for a position. They were setting up a studio for Multicap, which is Multiple Handicapped Association. Yeah. They were setting up a ceramic studio. So I went for the position of studio manager and got that. And that's when we started Monte Lupo, which is still going.
Yeah, still going strong. Yeah.
So we set that up and started working with about six people with disabilities. That was interesting. Yeah, so that was early 90s, so that started in 91. And then because I had contacts at the Queensland Art Gallery at the time, which is Cragoma now, Glenn Cook was the curator for ceramics there. So I just said, look, I think you'd like to see what we're doing here because it's interesting work. And he came out and he took me into the gallery to meet Doug Hall at the time. He was the director, and there was a couple of other people, Greg Roberts, who was running the marketing for them. And he said, yeah, this is great. We'll sell your work and market it through the gallery shop. So we started selling work straight through Queensland Art Gallery through their shop.
Yeah.
And then we did commissions for their blockbuster shows. So I think the first one might have been the Surrealist show, about 93.
I remember that. Yeah.
And the McCubbin exhibition. We did a couple. We did one. It was. I'd have to look at which ones we did, but that was great. So we made a range of works, maybe 100 works for each of those shows that they sold in conjunction with the exhibition. And we'd use the catalogue from the exhibition to generate ceramic forms and make these works that were after the artists who were in the Surrealist show. And we made a perfume with Jonathan Midgley. So he was a Brisbane perfumer, unfortunately no longer with us. But we made this perfume called Nocturnal. And we made ceramic eyes to go on the bottles. And that was a different time. So I was there for about 3 years.
Did you enjoy working in the studio?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And amazing to work with people who had no formal training, completely different idea about how they make a mark. Really honest work, quite raw, confronting in some ways, but beautiful again on the ceramic forms. They translated really well.
Yeah, it's still doing great work today. I was
Yeah.
just talking about, I saw a fantastic vase. It was a large scale vase, covered with sculptural pieces of fairy bread.
Yeah.
Bright colours,
Yeah,
just such a
fantastic.
beautiful piece, and that's quite distinctive of their work now.
It is, yeah. And it's just nice to think that's 30 years
Yeah.
or more that's been going, and it's still thriving, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah, like they're still selling at Goma and the
well, I didn't even know
markets
that they were still involved there. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. You've also done some work for Flying Arts, haven't you?
I did workshops for them, probably over a decade or so, and that would have been 90s into the 2000s. So those tours that they do, we did up to Thursday Island and Normanton and out to, where was it, along the border somewhere, Winton, like all of that region, Cairns, Maura,
Oh,
Central.
yeah, Maura, yeah.
Yeah, and then
That's where Hamish the electrician's moved to.
Oh,
From our neighbours.
Yeah,
From
yeah.
a previous episode, if anyone remembers.
well, interesting town.
Yeah.
And mining town. Those workshops are great. People were really keen to make work.
So what would you do? So you just jump in a car.
They'd fly me up to Rockhampton.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'd get a car from there and drive west.
Yeah.
Or to Cairns and then we'd go to Charters Towers and up to the Gulf, Karumba on the Gulf. And we flew to Cairns and then we'd fly up to Horn Island and go across to Thursday Island.
And what would you do once you got to the community? Like, would you...
So they'd have organised clay for there.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, not all the time, but and if they didn't have clay, we'd just adapt. I remember when we went to, wish I could remember the name of the town. It was west of Mount Isa, so we did workshops in Mount Isa and went to a little town, Indigenous community, which was west of there. And they hadn't got the clay, and so I took all the kids to the dump.
Yeah, great.
to find, to make sculptures out of found objects. And it wasn't until we got to the dump that I realised that none of them had shoes on.
Oh, no.
And glass everywhere. And I said, oh, look, sorry, I'm not sure this is going to work. 'Cause they said, oh, don't worry, we're here all the time and, we never got shoes on. So,
Great.
so you couldn't probably do it now. There was so much
we can
paperwork.
go to the dump these days.
Yeah. So we filled the bus with junk and brought it back to the school and we made crocodiles out of and stuck them in the garden at the front of the place.
That's awesome.
So we didn't need clay.
Yeah,
it would have been nice to have clay, but
Yeah. And so would you have access to kilns and stuff out there or what?
Most of the schools they had access. If they didn't have a kiln at the school, they had organised for the work to be fired. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds like a really good
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cool. So you're in Brisbane, you're doing some community work, you're working on your own practice, and exhibiting a lot?
Yeah. So I started exhibiting in Brisbane in 1989. So before I moved back. And then I had a plan to consistently exhibit every year, at least one solo show and then whatever group shows were going. And so I started exhibiting. It might not have been actually till 92. Oh no, 91 I did have an exhibition. And then when Amphora moved into the city, I had a large solo exhibition there, which would have been about 93. And that really got me started because it was the first large space exhibition, large paintings and large pots, ceramic forms. And that was great because they're all opened that for me, and I'd kind of worked out what I was doing with the body of work and how I'd realised that I think it's important that you realise as an artist that you don't have to tell the whole story with one work, that it's really about telling a story through a group of works and that one work leads to another. which is, I think, true for both ceramic works as well as painting. But you don't have to fit every idea you've got into one work. And we all do it. And sometimes it can work, but also it kind of, I don't know, it's almost too much information, you know. So then it started, I started showing at Michael Burke Gallery. So he came to the show I had at Amphora in the city. And he had a gallery in Newstead at the time. And he invited me to go and show with him. So I had a show with him in also in 94. That was 94. And then another show with him in 95. And then Doggett Street had opened up in Doggett Street in Newstead. So we started going to openings there, and so I then booked a show there in late 95. So I was making work, finding places to exhibit it, probably a few group shows in the mix.
Yeah. And have you always done paintings and ceramics together, or was that kind of the time you came to it?
No, well, like the first show I would have had, which would have been just a little show that I had in a house, that was ceramics and paintings. That was 88. And apart from the show I had at Fusions was only ceramic work. Maybe I've been in group shows which was just purely ceramic work, which is great. But I think whenever I've exhibited, it's had both. Not necessarily always ideal. And in retrospect, I realised that some shows should have just been ceramic work. Again, that idea of not trying to say everything in one sentence, in a sense, you know, and letting the ceramic work have a bit more room to breathe and more space. And some shows you don't want anything on the wall, just want the forms in the middle of the room. There's something really nice about that. So making those choices, you kind of learn as you go.
Why would you say that you have those two? Like, why do you think that you haven't chosen one and kind of let go of the other?
That's a great question. I think it's because I'm fascinated by creating something on a two-dimensional surface that has these qualities of depth and that have layers that reveal themselves to you, and that they're actually sitting on the wall. I know you can do that with ceramic work, but there's something really interesting about making, and I do a lot of on plein air work, and when you travel and paint, you could take clay with you.
Yeah.
But I usually find that's, you know, I have done it occasionally, but it's problematic. So sketching and painting watercolours or acrylic, it kind of formulates an idea for something that develops, and then what I find is the paintings come first, and then I translate that to form. So I have these ideas for a particular landscape, and then I'll make a form that kind of responds to the landscape. That I think, yeah, this surface, this form is going to carry this mark making on the surface, you know. But that's kind of evolves and changes too.
Yeah. But it's nice, I think, that you do those both, the landscapes on the paintings and the drawings. Like, I mean, in the ceramics. Like, yeah. I think there's something about that landscape work that's really powerful, seeing it on a three-dimensional form.
I hope so. Essentially, I'm making work I want to look at.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, I mean, every artist under the sun has more work that they've made than they're potentially selling. So you really want to be making something that you actually want to live with and look at. And you don't make something, well, we do, you make something and the next day you've got to show it. But ideally you're making a body of work over a period of time and you get to live with it for a month or two and know whether you actually want to look at the work yourself and if it does keep revealing things. And for me, it's about the spook. So it's that idea of, I think artworks, whatever medium, they either work or they don't. And it's subjective, but for the viewer, it either engages you or it doesn't. It's not like some things can take a little bit longer to reveal themselves, but that's the mystery of, I think, the mystery of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like this idea of the spook.
Yeah.
You're currently writing about it, aren't you?
Well, I've finished. It's cooked.
Finished. Yeah, great. Well done.
So just want to get it submitted so I don't have to look at it again.
Do you feel like you could say anything more about the spook? I love this idea.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I've just called it the spook because that's come out of conversations with other artists, and it's just an easy way, a succinct way of expressing something. But it's really about a creative presence and a work. Walking into an exhibition and seeing a group of paintings and one of them kind of resonates with you. Again, very subjective, but you look at the work and you come back to that work and it's still kind of revealing something to you. That I've just called that the spook.
So it's kind of almost like an outside of rational kind of formulas of what makes art good. You're looking
Absolutely.
at this kind of resonance that, yeah.
And it can transmit or translate in any multitude of ways, and often you're least expecting it. So it could be a work that's technically quite naive or awkward, but there's something beautifully awkward about the work, and it takes you to another place that you weren't expecting, and it kind of stays with you. Those things, that's one of the beautiful things about visual arts, is those experiences, you have them all the time, and you never know when it's going to happen, but when it does happen, it's very real. Yeah.
Listening to that, I can really hear that you really value the arts.
Oh,
so
yeah, deeply.
Yeah, where do you think that kind of value for the arts came from?
Yeah, I think it's come a lot from being in a relationship with Monica, my wife, and her family, European background, and seeing the type of work that Monica's mum, Kitty, had in her home, and the artists that they knew from that period, like 50s and 60s, and being exposed to those things, I guess, at school, high school, slowly formulating this idea that, wow, these are things that I want to look at. I want to see them. I want to have them in my world. I can't imagine now not having those, paintings on the wall, whether they're from 1860s or contemporary work. It's just something I can't imagine living without. Yeah.
Did you ever get into like the conceptual stuff? Because I feel like what we're talking about here is very much like work that you live with, that has a certain aesthetic that isn't always like beautiful, but is, what would you say, like kind of enjoyable. So
yeah, and again, it's I think for me it's about it's a two-dimensional flat surface can have a spiritual quality to it, a creative presence about it. That's kind of the spook idea. But in terms of contemporary work, in terms of performance work, or video work or installation work, certainly have an appreciation for those things, but they're a lot harder to take home.
Yeah, they are.
Do you know?
Yeah,
and you can. The great thing about those is you can go out and experience those and be in the moment with those works, and that's to be valued. And yes, it's something about that touches a different part of you and stays with you. But I think the fact that you know that it's temporal in a sense, and the works are temporal. They're designed to impact on you and affect your thinking. But no, I don't have any great desire to do that because there's so many wonderful artists who are doing it beautifully, and I can just go home and stick in my studio. And I mean, my studio is probably some kind of installation of chaos or something. I try and keep it tidy, but it's just not realistic.
No. I think a creative studio is a messy studio. Yeah. Well, everyone has different.
Everyone does it different.
Everyone's different, but I think you and I share that. Yeah.
I do admire people who make installation work and performance work and work that is of a temporal nature that might be politically charged. I have a lot of admiration for that, and there's works that really stay with you. that have that power. But it's not something that I personally am interested in creating.
I like how you've used this idea of the spook that goes across it and doesn't polarize these worlds. And I think that's something I've learnt through being your student is that, we have that argument about art and craft and all this stuff, but it's really irrelevant.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, for me, the idea of the spook transcends all of those things, and you can get bogged down in those debates and miss the whole point of making a mark, and performance work particularly. For me, it kind of relates to music, live music, which we both are big fans of. And you can have a band that you saw 6 months ago and the live performance is amazing, and the next time you see them, for whatever reason, it's flat, it doesn't work because the dynamic's different. That, to me, is also the spook. The same songs or the same musicians, different setting, responding to a different space, doesn't work, then why is that? It's
it's so interesting. So did you answer it? Why?
Yeah,
it's the spook.
It's the spook. It's the creative dynamic. And I think if you ask most creative people, there's times where it's present, whatever music, whatever theatre, and there's times where it doesn't matter what you do, it's dog shit.
Yeah. Can I read your PhD?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Just don't make me read it.
No. Traumatising. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm actually really happy with it. I think it's actually a pretty good read.
Are you thinking of doing anything with your PhD, like publishing it into a book or?
No, I mean, if I don't look at it for a while and read it again, it might be worth doing something with. But no, it's not.
No.
It's not. It's just.
Well, you've had some exhibitions as part of it, haven't you? So that's kind of the outcome into the world. Yeah.
And I think that as a document, if someone's bothering to read it and are interested in the concept of the spook, I think it will give them the information that they need to have an understanding of the concept. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm.
One thing I've been doing a little bit of research about your history and your background and stuff, and I've noticed you're always, or quite often, you're in a shared studio space with other people, or you're teaching with the community, you're going out to communities. So it seems like community is a really big part of your practice. Yeah.
I mean, it's happenstance, really, but I do enjoy teaching, and I do enjoy not only sharing my knowledge, but you know what it's like if you're teaching anywhere with a group of people, you're learning from what they are doing because we're all different. And so it's often a two-way street because teaching can be exhausting. If it's not, it can be, but I think most of those times that I've had those experiences, there's always been a rich exchange of information and knowledge, and not just practical knowledge in terms of life knowledge and subject matter on people working on particular things or projects in their life that's meaningful, and you think, wow, that's fantastic, and that's yours. That's the great thing about being an artist and telling your own story, is it's your story, and no, it doesn't belong to anyone else, so you can kind of do it however you want.
When you came to Toowoomba, so you came up here to teach.
I came up to do my Masters at
did you? Yeah.
USQ in 2001. And then when I finished, as I was finishing that, they asked me if I'd like to teach. Yeah. And I filled in for the ceramics lecturer at the time for a semester. So that would have been 2007. And then I did that again in 2008. And then again in 2000. I did it 3 years, but there was a gap, so it might be 2009 or 2010. And then I just loved coming up to Toowoomba, and I said, look, if ever a position comes up and you need someone in the creative arts, I'd love to apply, So that kind of eventuated in 2011. But I was working at the Royal Brisbane in mental health diversional art as part of the occupational therapy. That was an interesting time.
You do so much community stuff, David.
Well, again, it's just come my way.
But obviously there's something you get from it. Like, you could go and interview many artists around and not all of them have done that.
No.
You know, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I must admit I haven't kind of specifically thought about doing it, but maybe my skill set, that's something that I can do. Working mental health is emotionally exhausting, and if anyone's looking at doing it, I would recommend that you do it probably for about 3 years max, and at least have a break. I should have had a break. I shouldn't have kept working there, because you kind of lose your mind.
Yeah, well, you forget what is normal. Like, I mean, I know there's no such thing as normal, but you forget what the baseline of the population is, and you start thinking that this is the baseline.
Very true. The other thing is it's overstimulating.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with people in a range of emotional states, mental health states. You're seeing people get well and leave the system, and then you never see them again, but you see people get well and in 6 months' time they're back.
Yeah.
And you see people who don't get well and often don't survive. And so it's a range of things that, that can pull you under.
Yeah, it sounds
emotionally.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you working with clay?
Also rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we set up a pottery, got a kiln and a wheel, and
great.
So I was teaching people how to hand build and throw on a wheel. Yeah.
And did you find that there was it was rewarding for people there?
I think, clay is such a great medium for that type of work, diversional, because it's so tactile. And some people don't like touching clay because it's messy and sticky, but that was a rarity, a minority. Most people were happy to just get in and get their hands dirty and kind of get out of themselves through the medium of clay. And because it is literally hands-on as opposed to holding a brush, it was a good medium for people, I guess, stepping out of themselves for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so back to Toowoomba.
So, yes.
So in Toowoomba, teaching, but you've also been part of some group studios, haven't you?
Yeah, so moved up here, started work full-time at the uni in 2011, and then at the time, I think Made was there. So Made Studio Gallery was there in Margaret Street, next to Tatters Hotel upstairs there. Great space, and that was Alex Stalling and Alicia. They started that. It must have been about 2011. So I had a studio upstairs there for about 18 months or so with Stephen Spurrier, who's a printmaking lecturer at uni, and we shared a beautiful space that looked over Margaret Street, and did a bunch of work there over that time, and they had shows which we were involved in. I think we had a solo show or two. And then that closed, and moved to, where did we move to from there?
Was that First Coat era? Were you?
So that was just around the time that Contraband, who's Ian McCallum.
Yeah, so that was like a street art kind of collective, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And First Coat was a mural festival that happened in Toowoomba.
So that they started a First Coat, which was, I think it was called Contraband to begin with, in Laurel Street in Toowoomba near Queen's Park there. They started that in 2013. Towards the end of it. So they moved from the grid to there and set up a gallery space, and they had their workshop, screen printing studio at the back. And then it kind of evolved from there into the First Coat Festival, which I think started in 2014, which was a huge thing for Toowoomba, really kind of changed the culture in Toowoomba. And
you were involved, weren't you?
Not really. No, I was there.
Yeah.
I did murals for the 2015.
Yeah, that's the one I remember. Yeah.
And then 2016.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was 2015, 2016. Anyway, but Ian McCallum and Grace Stewart ran that. Amazing, like just so much work, but did an astonishing job.
It shifted the culture in Toowoomba a lot too, I felt.
Certainly did. And the way people investigated the city and went down laneways that they probably didn't even know existed. And some beautiful artists who came international and around Australia came up for the festivals. And people like Damien Campholz, who's unfortunately no longer with us, his beautiful monkey, mural is still there, which is a great legacy to have of his work. Just to be able to still walk around Toowoomba and see those murals is fantastic. And the exhibitions that were associated with that. Yeah,
so it sounds like a really good time to move to Toowoomba and get the art scene was pretty interesting then. Yeah.
Toowoomba goes through a cycle, and because we have the uni, it's kind of grounded in that because we have a lot of art students who come from Toowoomba who come to the uni. And it'll go round, but each time it goes round, it kind of deepens.
That's nice.
And becomes more sustainable. And the population in Toowoomba in the last 15 years has probably increased by 30 or 40%. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you enjoy having a shared studio space, working in those spaces with others?
Yeah, I do. I think you have to be careful about how many people you have in a studio space and that everyone has space. And if you get a group of, more than 8 people together, there's going to be a mix of personalities, mix of expectations. But yeah, it's usually a really positive thing creatively because you kind of chatting about each other's work and being able to critique each other's work. And having shared studios with Peter Berghofer, both at First Coat and then down at Lasoo when we had Lasoo and when Ali Lawson Gallery had the studios there. So those 3 spaces, because Peter's ceramicist, it was great to have that dynamic too, and because those kind of shared studios, I only ever really paint. I'm either making ceramic work at home or at uni. So it's nice to have the clay there, just to be able to smell it and see it,
I know, I think it was pretty tricky. It's one of those things that's kind of, you need a sink, you need these.
You need, and upstairs spaces which are beautiful and the light's beautiful and timber floors. Again, you're having to cart work up and downstairs to get to kilns and.
Yeah.
But we're, ceramicists are a resilient bunch.
Oh, she definitely made it work. Yeah.
Definitely makes it work, yeah.
Hopefully there'll be more spaces like that open in Toowoomba.
I think that it's inevitable. Artists, we adapt. And spaces that other people forget and don't want, artists move into and renovate and what do they call it? Oh, we activate spaces.
Activate spaces, yeah.
And then they come along and take them off us because suddenly they're worth more money.
It's true. It's very true. Yeah. So you're currently represented by Alexandra Lawson Gallery.
Yeah.
Have you had gallery representation throughout your career?
Yeah, I've been with a few galleries, and both in Sydney and Canberra and Brisbane. Probably the longest I was with Doctorate Street Gallery. That was about 15 years. And that was a loose cooperative of artists with Scott Whitaker and Alison Reynolds, who were both artists who ran Doctorate Street. But that was a great experience and great cohort of artists. But yeah, I've been with Alexandra Lawson since 2016, and she's had different spaces in that time, and we've had a bunch of shows in that 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, what would be the benefit do you think, of having gallery representation?
Well, for me, I can only kind of speak for myself. I don't have to deal with selling work. I can just focus on making work.
That's nice.
Having someone like Ali who's got a really good critical eye is great, who can come to the studio and help you decide on what work might go in the show. That's huge. And then organise exhibitions and the promotion of exhibitions and sales. And for me personally, that's ideal, because I don't want to be thinking about a lot of that stuff. I mean, titles of exhibitions and titles of work, that's great. I can do that, but also having a sounding board for even those things is important.
Yeah, who knows kind of that scene, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it probably has relationships with collectors and relationships with
absolutely
with people that will buy your work.
Which she's built over a long period of time. But having a relationship with someone that you actually like and who likes you and who is interested in your work, that's the key. Because there's plenty of people who will say, yeah, look, I'd love to sell your work, who it's just a product, it's just a commercial exercise, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think ideally a dealer or a representative or a gallerist, however you want to call it, I think the healthiest dynamic is to have someone that you can trust and have an honest conversation with about the work, because we all go through those times where we're self-critical and self-doubt, and having someone who's honest about what you're doing and objective is a real strength, I think, for your practice. Yeah.
It's like having a university teacher post-university.
Exactly.
Yeah, I often worry about, like, what will I do when I don't have this sounding board and this...
But they don't. Yeah. That doesn't change. I mean, even if you move to another city, those conversations that have started at uni, they just go on, you know. And it's always nice to hear about the success and the projects that students do once they've left, and like Alex stalling with Tinker, and I could think of probably 20 people who I still have contact with who are spread out all over the place doing great things. Yeah.
It's kind of nice about the small Toowoomba community too, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, even though people are spread out, we do have a little kind of community in this town that looks out for each other and supports each other.
And and transitions, people come and go, but there's a healthy core there, which I think is going to be, it'll change, but I think it's a nice community for those of us who are here, and it's nice for people like Dan Elborn, who's come out of that and is in Melbourne, where there's also a bunch of artists who've come from here, that they can still, you know, make contact if they want, and we can see them if we're in Melbourne.
And I think we've spoken about this before, but like, as being a student and very much on the emerging journey, it's really great to see people who have been to an institution like our uni and made those relationships and then have a national or international practice. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a pathway. So those things are important, because it doesn't end at your finish of your undergraduate. It doesn't end if you do honours or you do a PhD. It's just the beginning, really. Yeah.
Well, David, so you've had a very creative life. You've lived a creative life. So would you have any advice for someone who's like thinking about starting on the path of creating how to go about it?
I think it's quite simple. I think make work about your life, because it's there. You've been living it. You know it. And it's an endless resource, in the sense that there's always going to be a story to tell. Every day of your life is a story. And if you can kind of use that as your foundation for your life, for your practice, that I think would be really rewarding. If you're passionate about specific issues, political or otherwise, that's also a great resource to make work out of with clay, whatever medium. And I guess the reality of paying bills and making your way and having a family and having kids and all the things that life brings you, they are all opportunities for feeding into your practice. But I think it's important for artists to make time for themselves to make work, and it might only be an hour, on the weekend between other things. But if you manage to do that and sustain that, it will sustain you in many ways.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. So what's coming up for you?
So I've got a show in Brisbane in June at Latrobe Space with Naomi White, who's a painter from Melbourne, and Liesl Baker, who's a painter from Toowoomba. And this will be our third show of landscape work together at Latrobe Space over the last few years. And we just really get on well and have a nice dynamic between ourselves. It's a really good bunch. So we have a nice time together. But also I think our work fits together well. So we're looking at the landscape through different lenses, and then strangely they kind of sit together in an interesting way. Yeah. And because we have quite a different approach.
Yeah, great. Looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, and pots. I'm making new pots for that. Hopefully get them fired in time. Yeah, so hopefully I'll get those through.
Yeah.
It's good.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to the podcast?
Well, we've got a group show of ceramic work in the little gallery there, that beautiful space.
Yep.
And that's in November.
Yeah.
And that's a follow-on from our group show at the regional gallery, the Rosalie Gallery, which was called Terrain. The show in Ipswich will be a follow-on from Terrain. But I think we're all making new work for that.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's a little way off.
Yeah. We've got some time.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice to have that group show, and then maybe we're looking at other shows in Brizzy as a group again, potentially.
Yeah, it's almost like a little collective of playmakers. Yeah.
Again, a good bunch. I think that's important too. You find people who you connect with and gravitate towards and can work with. If you find that often at uni when you're studying, if you find those relationships can last your lifetime.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is all our works put together speak really well to each other.
It's a cross-section of ceramic practice, really.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Anything else?
Well, they're the stories I can tell you.
They're the ones
can't tell you the other ones. What happens on the road
stays on the road.
Stays somewhere.
No, I feel like there'd be so much more gold to mine. But anyway.
Not necessarily.
I should just bring the microphone into the studio for our lessons. I feel like some good stories.
There's some good stories there. Well, I still like your quote. It's all done. I've just got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think I use that just about every day.
Do you? Yeah. Well, I feel like it's true.
Yeah.
The hard work's up here. And then,
the preparation.
Yeah. Mind you, we'll see how this work that I was talking about will turn out.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And if it's not, it'll be something else.
Yeah. Okay, David, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
What an amazing life you've had, and thanks for sharing.
Oh, thanks for asking me to chat.
Yeah, lovely. We'll probably come and chat to you again another time, I think.
Yeah.
So, watch
Part
out.
B.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed. You can find us on Instagram at birdsofclay_podcast. Please feel free to send us any questions or comments. And if you could leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, that would be amazing. We'll see you next time.